great to have you all here. So, thank you for the introduction, Abby. Okay, so the title of my talk here is A Green World Powered by Green Energy, Renewable Alternatives to Conventional Energy. So if these are not all words that you know right now, that's totally fine. I'm going to try to kind of step through it. We'll come back to the title slide at the end, and hopefully it will all make sense. Or if you already know a lot of these words, maybe you'll learn something new along the way. So a little bit about my story. I first fell in love with chemistry when I was in high school. I had a fantastic teacher my senior year, and I was like, this is what I want to do. And because I just loved the problem solving, the math of it all. And so I went on, so I grew up right outside Boston. And so then I kind of took like a little short trip to New York City, where I attended the university at Fordham, and I continued my studies in chemistry. And so there I was still really enjoying my classes, but I also got to start doing research. So I learned that I love not only learning things that have already been discovered, but discovering new things and adding to the knowledge that we have about chemistry. And then I took a gap year and I went to Montana. And this was wonderful because I love teaching, I love physical education. It was really a fun time. But it was also great because Montana is an absolutely beautiful state. So it was wonderful to just like be in a place that was beautiful and see all the different environments that were around. And it kind of helped deepen my appreciation for the planet that we live on and my passion for working to save it. So then I was like, how can I put all this together? So I was like, okay, I'll go to graduate school, continue chemistry, which I know I love, and work on something that has an application in sustainability. So working to keep the Earth the way it is for years to come. So a little bit about the world. So these scenes that are beautiful that we just enjoy, right? So you might enjoy going on a hike in the mountains or sitting at the beach or looking at flowers. These are all wonderful just in and of themselves, but they're also important for us to be able to survive. So the Earth produces the air we breathe, the food we eat, and then also this is where we get the energy that we need to do lots of different things. So if you kind of look at these different images, some things might seem super obvious, right? Like you know you need electricity to charge your phone or your iPad or computer, right? You know that you need electricity to turn the lights on in your house or to heat your school, right? You know that you need gas in your car. But some things maybe you don't like super think about like right off the bat. So maybe like you think about like your textbooks or your clothes or any of your toys. Those were all manufactured somewhere, so they were made somewhere and it took energy to make those. Also your food, since we don't all live on farms, you can't just go out to the backyard and get your food. It has to be grown somewhere, and then it's processed, and then it's shipped to where you are. And that's actually uses a whole lot of energy. So right now, we get a lot of our energy from three main sources. So coal, oil, and natural gas. So natural gas actually is just a clear gas. You can't actually see it. So this is a picture of it burning in a stove, which is probably what most people associate with natural gas. And so this is currently what we use. But the problem is that these are not renewable. These are fossil fuels, which means they come from the earth. And that also means that there's a limited supply. They're not being refilled. Like as you use it, it's just gone. And so if we look at this graph, so this graph is based off the current usage we have of each of these and the current amount that we have discovered. So if we look at this, it says that the oil, if we keep using it at the same rate that we're using it, will be gone under 50 years. And same with natural gas. Coal has a little bit longer, but if we have to stop using the oil and natural gas, we'll have to use more coal. So all of these are going to run out. Probably, and a lot of you guys will hopefully still be alive, right, in about 50 years. And you're still going to be wanting to do all those things that you needed energy for. So we have a little bit of a dilemma. We want to be able to do all of these things and have all of these nice luxuries, but we will run out of fuel if we keep using the same sources that we're using right now. So we have to think of new ideas. And one of these ideas is to capture the energy of the sun. So a kind of cool thing about the sun is it's called what we call renewable. So if you take energy out of the sun, there will still be energy left. So every day, right, the sun rises and sets, and it's not going to stop doing that for a very, very long time. So this is what we're called renewable. It doesn't get used up. And so you can capture the energy of the sun using something called solar panels. Can anyone point to which one of these is in New Haven? Yeah, right here. So these are on the roof of IKEA, right here in New Haven, which is pretty cool. So solar panels can take the sun's energy, which comes to the earth in the form of photons, and turn it into electricity. And it's really cool because you can put it into infrastructure we already have. So you can put it on the roofs of buildings you already have. If you guys look when you walk out, there's actually solar panels on the roof of this building we're in right now. So that works really well. You don't have to build any new buildings for this to become part of the cities and the places where we live. And then kind of on the other side, it works really well in very remote places where there aren't other buildings and other people living around. So if we imagine that this cabin up here is in the middle of nowhere, and there's no one else living around there, so there's no power plant producing electricity, there's no telephone wires, so they can put solar panels on the top of their house and produce their own energy right there where they are. So these work really well for both fitting into cities and then also in remote areas.
Yeah.
So another thing we could think of using is the wind. So the wind, just like the sun, is a renewable resource. If you take energy out of the wind, it's not going to keep it from blowing the next day. There will always be wind. And so you can capture the wind using things called wind turbines. So these are things you usually see maybe in more rural areas. And the reason for that is because they're very large. We'll talk about it a little bit more on the next slide. But they also move really fast. Maybe you've seen them and it kind of looks like they're moving around slowly, but what actually happens is the tips of them are moving really, really fast. They're moving up to 180 miles per hour. So if you can imagine, that would be a bit of a problem if you had that in the middle of New Haven, because that's very dangerous. So they have these in rural areas where there's not a lot of buildings and people around, and they're also starting to put them offshore. So they're putting them in the ocean. So if you see, this is where New Haven is, where the star is, and right off the coast of Block Island, they've currently put these wind turbines in the ocean. All the other colored spots on this map are places that companies have leased parts of the ocean and have plans to build more. So this hasn't all happened yet. They're kind of, I think, waiting to see how it works at Block Island. But this would work really well, right? Because there's no buildings in the ocean, no people are trying to live out there. So there's plenty of space. So if you kind of look at the size compared to snakes and buildings that you guys might know of, the ones that you usually see on land are comparable in size to skyscraper buildings. So still pretty big, right? These middle ones we don't really see very often, but these would be put in like very rural areas. But then these are the ones that we're talking about putting in the ocean. And those, compare it to the Eiffel Tower, and that's very large. But it's okay because there's nothing else in the way. So, if we want to look at these two options right now, we can compare solar power from the sun and wind power. So, we talked about how solar can be very easily integrated into the infrastructure that we already have, into the cities where we live, whereas wind cannot. But wind can be found out in the ocean. Okay, and then we want to talk about this number of efficiency. So scientists use this to see how much energy you're getting out for how much you put in. So a certain amount of energy, the sun is shining onto your solar panel, and then you look at how much electricity you're getting out, and you can use those numbers to calculate something called efficiency. So you want it to be as close to 100% as possible. And so right now for solar, it's between 25 and 45%. The reason that there's this big range is because the 45% efficient solar cells are really expensive. So a lot of people are still using ones that are closer to the 25 side of things because it's just not like economically feasible for companies or individuals to buy ones that are 45%. So most wind power is more at the 45% end of things right now. And then we have this big problem with both of these. Sometimes the sun is not shining and sometimes it's not windy. So just because it's cloudy out doesn't mean you don't want to be able to play on your iPad, right? So we have to come up with a solution to this. And so right now there's a lot of research going on in these areas. Here at Yale and really all across the world, a lot of people are working to solve these problems. And so some of the things that they're doing are working to improve the efficiency. So make it that you get more electricity out for every input that you put in. We also want to reduce the cost, because if you can make these cheaper to buy, then more people, companies, governments are going to be able to use this and have these as options for your growth. So, and then, okay, finally, this one's really important, developing storage options. So we need like batteries or fuels that we can have so that you can kind of charge them up when the sun's out or when it's windy, and then use that stored energy that you have for when at night the sun sets or it's cloudy or not windy. So these are all really big areas right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the research I did while I was at Florida. So my research was working on the improving efficiency side of things. So I worked with a certain type of solar cell called the dye-sensitized solar cell, which I'm going to talk about a little bit right now. So here's a diagram of what a dye-sensitized solar cell looks like. And it might look a little complicated, but I'm going to try to walk you through it. So the way it works is you have a particle of light, so which we call a photon, and it comes in and has a lot of energy. And it's absorbed by one of these dye molecules. But now they have too much energy, and they don't want to have all this energy. So what they do is they get rid of an electron. And this electron is then able to travel through this gray material, and it comes out here. And if you can imagine, this black line here is like a wire. So now you have electrons flowing through a wire. And flowing electrons is what electricity is. So now you have electrons flowing through here, and this electricity can be used to, in this case, turn on a light bulb, but you could have it do whatever you want it to do. And then it returns here, and then there's this iodine that takes the electron and it brings it back to the dye where it started. So theoretically, this should be able to happen infinite times. And as long as you have sun coming in, you would have electrons flowing. So I want to make this more efficient. And a kind of way to think about it is a game of pinball. Can you guys raise your hands if you've played pinball before? A lot of you guys? Very cool. Okay. So, if you were playing pinball, and you shoot the ball up, and it comes straight back down, and doesn't bounce off anything, are you going to get a lot of points? No, right? So you can think about that as the same with the solar cell. If the light goes straight through, and it doesn't hit any of the dye molecules, you're not going to get any electricity. But, in pinball, if you can get the ball to bounce around a whole lot of times, you're going to get a lot of points, right? So if you can get your photon in your cell to bounce around a lot of times and hit more dye molecules, you're going to get more electricity. So more points in pinball, more electricity. And the way that I worked to do this was with low nanowires. So I talked to a bunch of you about nanowires, right? Does anyone remember how many nanometers are in the diameter of a piece of hair? Anyone? Right there? 100,000, yeah, great remembering. Okay, cool. So each of these little wires that you can see right here is 50 nanometers wide. So these are really, really small, and you can't see them with just your eyes. You have to use a very special kind of microscope called a scanning electron microscope to be able to see these. So the reason we put these in is they're kind of just like in that pinball game. They're the little things that make the light bounce around. So if you add these in, the light's going to bounce around, you're going to get more points, more electricity. But since they're made out of metal, well, specifically gold, you'd think that would be really expensive. But the good thing is, since they're so small, it doesn't actually add much cost to what you're doing. But also, since they're metal, that means that they're conducting, which we don't want. We don't want our electrons going into these wires. We want them going into the circuit, right, to create the electricity that's flowing. So what we did was we coated them in silica, which is an insulator. And pretty much this was done for the exact same reason that any of your charging ports are coated with an insulator, right? You want the electricity in your port to just travel through your port. You don't want it to be interacting with the environment around it, and you don't want the environment around it interacting with your port. So that's exactly why we coated them, so that the electrons that are flowing in your cell aren't going to these wires, they're going where you want them to be. So this is the research I did, which is just like a very, very small part of all the research that's going on in this area. But now if we look back to the title slide, maybe we have a little bit more of an idea of what we talked about different conventional energies. We talked about coal, natural gas, and oil, and why we can't rely on these to be our source of energy for much longer, because we'll run out. And we talked about two of the alternatives that are renewable, so the solar and wind. There are other options, but these are
the oil and natural gas, which according to your prediction has a life of 50 years. Like after that we won't have any. So what about the electricity that generated from cars? Now scientists are discovering on the electric cars, so that can give a more lifespan to the oil and to the gas.
So absolutely. So if we cut down on our use of oil and natural gas and coal, then it will last longer. Because the point is that there's a finite amount. So if you're using it faster, it's going to run out faster. If you're using less of it, so if you're starting to supplement in some solar power and some wind, then you'll be able to have oil for longer.
So the question was, is there a possibility of finding natural gas and oil on other planets?
Other planet people want to comment on that?
There's a moon of Jupiter, or a Saturn, called Titan, that has rivers of methane on it. So if we flew there and mined those, we could get a lot of people with that super methane. But
It's also going to take a lot of energy to get there. Right, so cost-benefit analysis.
That's a great question.
By the time we get there, we will finish.
Here.
So, we know that the energy that we use right now, like the coal and the non-reusable, are bad for the planet's atmosphere, etc. Like, it's damaging our atmosphere and the air that we breathe around us. So why do we still use it? If we just find during this time to find a new way to get solar energy, wind energy, etc.
That's a fantastic question. I think the answer is that we should just switch. But I think right now a big limiting thing is cost. So right now it's not very expensive to fill up it's kind of expensive to fill up your car with gas, but maybe not as expensive as buying like an electric car, right? So I think right now it's just all about how much things cost. But yeah, ideally we would absolutely want to use only these renewable fuels.
Thank you, Grace Buncher.
So related is solar power.
Can you just yell it really loud? Like just trying to get it.
solar power and battery, right?
Yeah. So kind of cool thing that there's a lot of research happening on right now is to use the power that you get like from a solar panel and create different fuels. So you can kind of create things that are sort of like oils or like jet fuel, but you make it from the power that you get from a solar panel. Absolutely.
Okay, we have time for one more question. And I saw this hand, it's been up for a really long time. So
do you really think the sun will be a reliable source? And for how long?
Yes. So it's been around for many billions of years. I don't remember the exact number. And we expect it to be around for definitely billions more.
Yeah, because I learned that eventually the sun will stop burning, I think it's hydrogen, and it'll start burning planets.
Yeah.
To a certain place.
That's definitely won't be an issue, but probably really, really far down the road. A great question.
So astronomers over here, how much time does our sun have left?
5-10 billion years. We're good.
I think like humans will be around in 5 to 10 billion years. But that won't cost us anything. But